Sligo is a county in the province of Connacht in the west of Ireland. In the heart of County Sligo lies a thriving town, rich in history and heritage. Sligo, known as the gateway to the northwest, is an increasingly expanding town in the midst of a major renaissance. Roughly half to two-thirds of the town centre has been refurbished in the past decade, fusing its centuries-old historic architecture with a new, modern twist. The most famous buildings in the town are the Roman Catholic Cathedral, the W.B. Yeats Centre, the Town Hall, and the Courthouse. The town is situated on the Garvogue River and is surrounded on three sides by mountains, the most famous of which is Benbulben to the north and Knocknarea to the south. The Garvogue River flows into the sea at Sligo Bay and Ballester Bay, surrounding the Cool Lyra Peninsula. Sligo's Irish name, Sligo, which means a place of shells, which comes from the fact there was an abundance of shellfish in the river and its estuary. This was a prime reason for large settlement in the region during the prehistoric period. One such prehistoric settlement existed at Carramore, located roughly 6 kilometres from Sligo town, which dates back almost 4,000 years before Christ. It is the largest cemetery of megalithic tombs in Ireland. More than 60 tombs are spread out across 6 square kilometres in the shadow of Knocknarea. This stretch of history is known as the Neolithic period, which saw people change from a nomadic to a settled lifestyle, thus leading to the beginning of modern farming as we know it. These settlers began to harvest wild grasses and realised that wild animals such as ox, goats and pigs could be controlled and even modified by selective breeding. This evolution led to the appearance of agricultural communities, which saw the emergence of town life. The spread of this new way of life brought with it the custom of communal burial in great stone structures known as megalithic tombs. As the name indicates, these monuments were usually built with very large stones, often weighing tens of tons. It is clear that considerable engineering skills were required to assemble them. But what was the actual purpose of these tombs? And how long did people live here? To try and clarify this, we ask Dr. Marion Dowd, a lecturer of archaeology in the Sligo Institute of Technology, and a specialist on Carramore.
Why is Carramore so important?
Carramore is very important because it's one of only 4 passage tomb cemeteries in Ireland, and in Western Europe as a whole we have very few cemeteries, so it's very important not just from an Irish perspective but also from a European perspective.
And who was buried in these tombs?
It's difficult to say who exactly, but probably the more important members of the community. And there's also a possibility that some tombs were reserved only for certain families, so we may have the same family reusing a particular tomb over several generations.
And what was the burial procedure?
People would have been cremated in a separate area, crematoria, away from the passage tomb cemetery. And then some of the cremated bones would have been brought to the tombs and placed in the tombs with grave goods, maybe pottery or flint artefacts, jewellery, necklaces of bone beads and stone beads.
The earliest evidence of Christian settlement is the Round Tower located at Drumcliff. Here the tower was raided by Vikings on many occasions, from the early 9th until the 10th century. After this turbulent period in Irish history came the Normans. Instead of constantly raiding as done by the Vikings, the Normans quickly integrated into the culture by developing a network of Dominican friaries, or abbeys as they are now known. In Sligo town a friary was built on the order of Maurice Fitzgerald, the Baron of Offaly in 1253. The building of the friary completed his rule over Connacht. The building was originally just a church. However, the Dominicans would have been granted large lands to farm and would have fished from the river. In 1414 the abbey was burnt down in a fire caused by a candle. The chief friar of the day was Brian MacDonagh. He was a member of a very wealthy clan and was able to raise funds fast. This period concurred with the Renaissance, and he was able to rebuild the abbey into the surviving structure we see today. For instance, the cloisters, the reading window, and the tower have been added during this time. These advanced structures can still be seen today. This culture of building and masonry continued through the following century. In 1506, the O'Kreen monument was completed and dedicated by the O'Kreen family, who were successful merchants in the region at the time. The stone high altar is the only sculptured example to survive in any Irish monastic church. The front panel is finely carved with foliage ornaments, grapes, and a rose. The O'Connors were a powerful family that lived in the town during the late 1500s. This was a turbulent period in Irish history, with the plantations of Ulster by Queen Elizabeth resulting in the Tyrone Wars. In 1595, Sligo was laid siege, and the roof beams were taken from the abbey and used as part of a battering ram on a Norman castle that once existed on High Street. The siege failed, thanks to Sir Donogh O'Connor, Lord of Sligo, and his lady wife, Eleanor Butler, for it was the O'Connors' influence with the Queen that saved the Sligo Abbey from dissolution, a fate suffered by the majority of Irish Catholic religious houses of the late 1500s. The O'Connor monument was built in 1624 to commemorate the family for their relationship with the Queen. The friary suffered much damage over the centuries. In 1642, the armies of Sir Frederick Hamilton, a Cromwellian soldier, attacked Sligo town, causing significant damage to the friary. An edict of banishment was imposed on the friary in 1698, when the property was seized under the agency of the Crown. In the early 18th century, a local businessman named Thomas Corcoran quarried the friary for building materials to construct townhouses nearby. In one instance, Thomas Corcoran and his wife were going to the theatre when a woman headbutted him in public. He promptly sold his business and moved to America. Despite all this, the friaries were in residence up until the 1760s, after which they relocated to the friary on High Street, and the order is still there today. In 1832 there was a cholera epidemic in the town, and in 1847 there was the Great Irish Famine. Sligo town was one of the sailing points to the Americas. Unfortunately, many died before they could leave. The abbey was then used as a burial ground during this period. There are approximately 5,000 to 8,000 bodies buried within the grounds. During the 1860s, Lord Palmerston, a British Prime Minister of the 19th century, restored part of the ruins of the abbey. The abbey was handed over to what is now known as the Office of Public Works in the 1950s, and is now open to the public. It is quite a tourist attraction for many Irish Americans tracing their roots. It is interesting to note that these historic sites could have only been built with the help of foreigners coming to our lands, bringing with them knowledge, skills, and a new way of life. Before the megalithic period, the people were nomadic hunter-gatherers. After this period, we see settled communities. This gave people more time and energy to think on ways of improving their livelihoods and contemplate religious beliefs. The tomb structures are statements of importance of this period. The tombs often carry the legacy of many generations of a clan or a community. When the Normans landed in the 10th century, the churches in Ireland were just round towers and monasteries, and had little or no power over the people. However, with the introduction of Dominican religion and the building of Dominican friaries, we see a huge shift in local administration. These structures of the time were revolutionary in terms of design. The Carrowmore Passage tombs represent astrological symbols and are a transit between mythological Queen Maeve's grave and the sunrise. The abbey's design employs architecture styles that originated in the Middle East, such as the arch and masonry, which had never been seen before in Irish soils. The abbey, like Carrowmore, is a statement of power, a base of religious belief, and a burial ground for the respected among the community, leaving their mark in history, which we need to preserve for future generations.